Hey guys, I'm Brian.
And I'm Terry.
And welcome back to the Forest Farm Project. Today we're bringing you the rebar detail video we told you about when we installed the rebar. So if you want to see the installation video first, check the link right up here. But what we're going to do today is just go over all the details that we learned along the way installing this rebar and the stuff we used to do it.
It's not complicated at all. It's pretty simple, really.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
And hopefully save you some money as well. On that note, the money saving part, if you go to your big box store and buy rebar, you're going to get it in 10-foot lengths. And it's going to be around, on our prices at our local area in South Carolina, it's around $7.50 for a 10-foot stick. And at the supply house, for a builder's supply house, it was $7.25 for a 20-foot stick. That's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Then when it comes to...
The only thing is, can you transport 20-foot sticks? We had them delivered. It was worth it to us.
It was a $35 delivery fee. It's well worth it because not only did we save money on the rebar, the rod chairs. These are Rite rod chairs. Rite makes all kinds of building products. You probably see them if you go to Lowe's or Home Depot. They mostly sell Rite screws because they're really good screws and fasteners of all kinds.
They've got nails. They've got roofing material. They've got sealer for foundations.
Yeah, they've got anything you can think of just about. We'll actually be using a good bit of it building our houses as well.
Mm-hmm. Good products.
Yeah, they really are. The rod chairs are made by Rite. Well, these rod chairs at your local big box store are around 78 cents a piece, I think. Again, building supply, 25 cents a piece. That's a huge savings when you think about how many of these go into each house. We used 150, I think.
I think so, yeah.
So
we were a little bit overkill. We put extra ones here and there.
Yeah, but that saves a lot of money between the rebar and the rod chair. And then also we used a tie wire, which Dad calls it a giant bread twister, because that's basically what it is.
It is.
And this is made by Rite as well. This is a 16 gauge, 3.5 pound tie wire. And I'm not exactly sure how many feet it is, but we used one roll. I don't remember how much it was exactly, but we used one roll for both houses. And
total, yeah.
So it worked out really well. We've still got a good bit left over.
Yep.
And when it comes to the tie wire, we weren't sure exactly how much length we needed on these to do the ties properly. So what we did is just cut a length at random and see if it gave us enough to do it, which it did. And it ended up being right around 6 inches. Well, we didn't want to have to hold a tape measure out every time to do that. So we actually had a wire nut container because we do electrical work. And we just pulled it, as you can see here, pull it to the length of the wire nut container. I held it, Dad snipped it, and we just made a pile of them. And you go through hundreds of these. So just be prepared, sit down, and cut a ton of them. That's the great thing about this part of it is you can sit at home and cut these while you're watching TV and get them ready for when you go out to do the job, because that takes a long time to cut a couple hundred of these, no doubt.
Yeah, and I want to bring something up while you're talking about that. These are Milwaukee Lineman pliers. Or do they call them Lineman pliers?
Yeah, they're Lineman pliers.
Okay, some of them call them different things. Well, these are Lineman pliers. We've owned multiple different brands over the years, and I've been using these my whole life doing electrical work. And some of them, very short order, they will not open. You literally have to pull them open and squeeze them shut. You got to
oil the fool out of them.
Yeah, these have never been oiled. They work perfectly well.
And they're between a third and a quarter of the price of some of the other brands that we've used.
And the cutting area right there where the jaws come together, why they would do this, the other brands do not come together. You can just about stick your fingernail between it. I mean, it's such an open gap. Well, when you go to cut things, you pinch and then you have to break it.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
With these Milwaukees, they're tight all the way. They cut through.
They work extremely well, and like I said, they're around $15, I think. So I mean, you can't beat it. It's a great set of pliers. They'll cut just about anything you need to.
And the grip here on the jaws is great. I mean, they work great. So
work extremely well.
Worth the money.
Yeah,
definitely.
Now let's just we'll take you guys through the process of what we did and what we used. One thing we used that was a little unconventional was, since we do electrical work, we used a conduit bender.
Yeah, and we didn't have a 1/2-inch rebar bender. Yep. Those things are not cheap.
No.
And then a buddy of ours had a 3/4 rebar bender, so we went ahead and used it to do some of the bends. Yeah. Mainly that
the bulkhead bends is
conduit
what we used,
bender.
The rebar bender.
The 1/2-inch conduit bender. I mean, that thing was easy to use. Yep. Made a nice clean round corner.
In the video, it makes a really nice corner. It's a very easy tool to use.
Yep.
And it's multi-purpose, because if you're going to be doing any work on your homestead where you need wire in conduit, then you can also use that conduit bender to bend the conduit you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
In a barn or something like that where you want the wire protected, that would be a good tool to have.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, having never laid rebar before, we weren't sure exactly how things were going to work out. And when you use a bender, if you use a rebar bender, it makes about a 90. I mean, it's a really short 90. You're not going to gain or lose much in the length of your rebar. But when you use a conduit bender, that long bend has an effect on the distances. So we weren't sure exactly how it was going to work out. And even though we're electrical contractors, we do residential electrical, mostly high-end homes, but very little conduit. If it is, it's a stick of EMT straight up the wall, maybe one bend here and there, and that's it. So we really haven't had to utilize it that much, and there's no need to get that complicated. We went in there, we went to one end of the house where there was nothing but a straight wall and then two walls coming off of that. We laid the conduit, or we laid...
He keeps calling it conduit.
Yeah, we laid the rebar, bent it in a 90, somewhere near the middle, laid that in the corners, so we had both corners, then we connected between them. We had to make an extra cut probably here and there, but we weren't worried that much about that. We used those pieces up, we didn't have any real scrap. It all worked out.
Yeah.
But getting those corners in there first gave us an idea where things were going to work out and give us a feel for what we were doing, and it was really simple.
It's an easy place to start. Obviously, you can go throw the straights in wherever you want, all over the place, but you may end up wasting rebar doing that, because when you get to these corners, you want the longest piece you can have wrapping that corner. You don't want a short piece in a corner that you're going to lose structural integrity with.
Yeah, the weakest point is corners and T's and whatnot, or where your bulkheads are.
Yeah.
So you want a solid piece of rebar there. I was going to say conduit, but I didn't. You want a solid piece of rebar there.
Yeah.
So we just said, let's do a 20-foot stick and bend it in that corner. That way we got a good solid all the way around, you know.
Another note on that 20-foot stick, by going with 20-foot sticks from the supply house, it's far less tie wire required, because you have half as many junctions using 20-foot sticks over 10-foot sticks at the big box stores.
Yeah, and speaking of junctions, what he's talking about is everywhere that one piece of rebar ends and another one starts, you have to overlap it. Ours was overlapped by 20 inches.
Right. So when it comes to overlaps, you have to be overlapped by 40 times the diameter of your rebar. So with this being number 4 or half-inch rebar, that means we have at least a 20-inch overlap at each location where the rebar runs into another rebar.
Right. And so if you had 10-foot sticks, now you're overlapping 20 inches of each 10-foot stick.
Yeah.
Instead of 20 inches of each 20-foot stick, which eliminates a joint in the middle. So you're losing a lot of rebar when you only do 10-foot sticks. Additionally, because you're every 10 feet or less, you've got way more work. You've got to make joints every time.
It's a
twist
lot
that
more
wire.
work doing all that.
And you're going to end up with having to buy another whole roll of wire, probably, instead of getting by with less than one roll for the two houses.
Yeah, makes a big difference. And may not seem like a lot, but all that squatting and bending will wear your knees out, especially when you're in this little bitty footing with all this rebar you're trying not to fall on.
Yeah, and we got big feet, so we couldn't get in there. It was a nightmare.
Yeah, it was
getting
a lot of
between
work.
here
It's
with a 14 quad E don't work.
Yeah.
Keep running into the rebar.
So it definitely makes a difference. Get 20-foot sticks if at all possible. If you have a way to get it out to your property, it makes a big difference in the long run.
Yeah, definitely.
As far as cutting goes, there's a variety of ways you can do this.
Hacksaw would take forever.
He actually joked about doing that at the beginning.
Yeah,
but we have a side grinder, so that's what we ended up going with.
We had it. We have a hacksaw, a sawzall as well, which would probably get the job done, but I think you'd probably wear them blades out pretty quick.
Yeah, I think so too. The side grinder, I think, is the most efficient method. It took a few cut-off wheels, really not very much money, and it worked really well. But you definitely want to have either another person holding the rebar or a very secure way to lock it down.
Clamp it down or something.
It will jump around on you at times.
Oh, yeah.
And
wear gloves.
Yes.
These are leather. Well, they got cloth on the back, but they're leather palms. When you cut this stuff, there is very sharp,
really
jagged
sharp
edges
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will eat you alive. They make a rebar cutter, but again, like the bender, they're not cheap.
Yeah.
No, people are proud of their rebar tools.
Yes, they are.
Okay, when it comes to bulkheads, we went ahead and ran the rebar from the corners in the direction of the bulkhead. When we got within 20 feet, we wanted to make sure we were somewhere near the middle of that, at least where we had 5 or 6 feet away from either end of the bulkhead, because again, bulkhead can be a weak point. You don't want a joint in the bulkhead, I wouldn't think. So we want to make sure that was as strong as can be. And we just slid, as you can see here, we slid the rebar down into the hole. We got our overlap on the end where the overlap was, the proper distance, which was 20 inches. Then we measured back, as you can see here, and that's where we made our bend with the 1/2-inch conduit bender, but to get an 8-inch rise, you can't do that second bend, so we had to use a 3/4 rebar bender to get that second bend, so there'd be a much tighter bend, so we can get closer to our 8-inch desired rise from one level to the next.
When it comes to these steps in the bulkheads, you want to be spot on with your measurement, or you at least want to be a little bit long. If you're short, it's hard to make that up, but if you're long, you can elongate your bend and drop the overall height back down to where you need it to be. We actually did that on a couple of them, and we did that by me standing on it on one end and Dad standing on the other and pounding on it with a sledgehammer to elongate that upper curve and
just basically bend it down some, and that brought it down what we needed.
Yeah, it worked. And
you got the job done.
Yeah, you just got to muscle it a little bit, but it works.
Yeah.
One big thing to keep in mind when you're laying out your rod chair is these cannot be more than 4 feet apart, at least in our area. So you can be less than 4 feet, but you cannot be more than 4 feet. So lay out a tape or a stick or whatever and place these every 4 feet minimum. And then one thing we did was anywhere that these ran into or were close to a grade stake that we had driven in the ground, we would actually butt this up to the grade stake, say if this is the grade stake, and that way we would not only be tying our rebar to this, we would tie it to the grade stake as well, just as another added point of ground contact, being locked down a little better. And it made it a nice secure area, and it also helped keep the rebar group from moving back and forth if it got bumped because it was locked to that rod chair. So when you're pumping concrete in the hole, it will help solidify things, keep it locked down a little better.
And once you get concrete going in there, it's a done deal. It's mostly there tied down like that. If you bumped it crawling, walking around and got into there, and you didn't want to knock everything all out of whack.
Which we hit it a few times.
Yeah.
And that was another reason we went with the rod chairs like this over the plastic ones that a lot of people use is the concrete just flows in around this with no problem.
Oh, yeah.
And, with the plastic ones, some of them have small openings that'd be difficult to get rebar down in, or not rebar, be difficult to get concrete down in there without a vibrator.
Conduit.
Yeah. That was one more task that Dad and I would have to take on when pouring the concrete was a concrete vibrator, and we were already pushed as it was. So having this big open void made it a lot easier for the concrete to get down in there. It worked really well.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And or aside from the 4-foot spacing, we didn't have to, but wherever there was a corner or a T, we had one on each side of every intersection.
Yeah, you'll see a picture here. We've got them about 1.5 feet or so away from the corner. That way you've got good support.
Yeah, because there's a lot more pressure going to be on that corner or a T especially.
Oh, yeah. And as you guys know, we are overkill. Our buddy that came to help us get started pouring the concrete said, hey, this is a commercial footing.
Basically.
Because our footings only had to be 12 inches wide, 6 inches deep, and we were 18 to 20 inches wide and anywhere from 8 inches to 14 inches deep, depending on where things fell and the soil conditions.
And my bulkheads, I think it was about 20 inches right in there.
Yeah, it happens.
Looking back, this is the first time we've ever installed rebar. Prior to doing it, I'd say with most projects, the fear of the unknown is your greatest enemy. Mm-hmm. You just have to say, okay, I'm going to get in here, I'm going to do what it takes, and I'm going to get it done. If I screw it up, I'm going to do it over. What it would have cost us to do the whole thing over would have been cheaper than we've paid somebody else to do it.
Easily.
So it's worth getting in there and doing it, and you're not going to screw it up that bad.
And rebar is not that difficult to work.
No, it was easy.
It really isn't, and if you don't have the tools to do it, it doesn't take that much money to get the tools you need, really. I mean, you can get a decent side grinder for this project at Harbor Freight.
Right. And as far as bending rebar, we had the conduit bender and we had the 3/4 inch, even though this is 1/2 inch, it was a little sloppy. It worked. Mm-hmm. You can slide a piece of pipe down on rebar and use it to bend. Mm-hmm. You can use an eye bolt mounted in a
4x4.
Like a 4x4, and you run the rebar through it, and then you just bend it upwards.
Yeah.
You can take 2 bolts and run them in the side of a 2x4, and then if this is 2 bolts, and I got it in the 2x4, I stick it over that thing, and somebody holds it, and you literally just bend it.
Twist it.
I mean, there's a lot of ways to get creative. You could drill a hole through a 4x4 or a 6x6, slide it in there, bend it. I mean, there's there's ways to get the job done.
Yeah, you don't have to buy an expensive rebar bender. But,
right.
It definitely would help.
It would, but when you're doing one project, I mean, it's just...
Yeah. Or you might be able to rent one, check and see if that's an option as well.
Right, and our rebar probably wasn't the prettiest rebar work you've ever seen, especially in the bulkheads, because we did have to bend it a little bit and whatnot.
But we got the job done.
With a sledgehammer. If it's a little ripply, it's buried in concrete. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So we got the job done. That's all that matters. And now, as you guys know, concrete's in the ground, so we are waiting on block. Hopefully the rain lets up that's forecast, and we can get block in the next week or so, and then
I'm sick and tired of rain.
you and me both. Once we get the houses in the dry, we can rock and roll, rain or not.
Yeah, we had little breaks throughout since last May, and it's November right now, the end of November. We had little breaks here and there that we could have got this job done. It rained every single time we had a break, from the day before we had a break till after our break was over, and then it quit for a few days. And we're like, we can be out there working. Got things we have to do.
We are so ready for a drought, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's about all there is to it, guys. Really, rebar is nothing to be scared of. It goes very quickly and easily once you get to it. You get a little dirty, but hey, that's just the job.
Yeah.
If you like what you see, give us a big thumbs up. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Hit that can't talk today. Hit that subscribe button below. Bell next to the subscribe button if you want to get notifications when we post new videos. And check back often. A lot coming, guys.
See you next time.
Have a good one.